Hi, my name's Jenny. I'm here with Dr. Taniesha Burke, and we are going to be talking about, well, this is Parenting the Fascinating Way, by the way, and we're going to be talking today about helping kids to overcome their negative thoughts or negative experiences and maybe thoughts that they've had about that. Did that come in as a question for you?
Yes, it actually came in on the Facebook feed. And
Okay.
the mother basically said, how do you best deal with children who have negative thoughts? Maybe they are stuck on feeling bad about something that happened a long time ago. How can you encourage them to be in the moment, overcome attachment to dwelling on past hurt, and look to creating a positive future? That's a very good question.
It is very good. I love
Yes.
it.
So, thank you, parent, for posting that question. I want to basically remind parents that children, and especially teens, similar to us, do have negative thoughts. And sometimes those negative thoughts can become very, very debilitating. Teens, in particular, because they're constantly going through hormonal changes, growth, trying to find their own individuality, and so on, the need to fit in to their peer group becomes very important, and the slightest thing that happens can cause them to think that they are not part of their social group. So there are several ways that may resonate with parents about how teens speak or think rather negatively, and I'll go through some of those. So how many of you can relate to your teen being the mind reader? They think they can read their friend's mind to say, my friend doesn't like me, my friend thinks I'm the worst, or they do fortune telling, where they predict the future about something that's going to be wrong,
Mm.
or somebody didn't call them back within 5 minutes as promised, and they jump to the wrong conclusion. Or sometimes something happened in a relationship or an experience, and they tend to focus on the negative instead of focusing on the positive aspects of it.
Mm.
Or they might go through a situation where they're disappointed and they think the whole world is unfair.
Mhm.
And a very important thing that teens and children go through as well is not feeling that they're capable, not feeling that they can achieve a certain bit of task or a particular goal. So these are some of the ways that children might fall into having negative thoughts. Now, what are the solutions on helping your children to be in the now or more future oriented? One of the first things I would recommend is look at your parent-child relationship. In about a previous episode, 2 or so ago, we talk about building the relationship with our children. We have to have enjoyable moments with them, moments where they invite us in to enjoy their world. And when we do that, it helps them to become closer to us. Because the thing is, parents, we cannot help our children to overcome negative thoughts if they think we're going to judge them, we're going to criticize them, or most importantly, we are going to blame them, or think that they are the cause of what is happening, or even lecture them. So the first foundation you need is a strong relationship where your children can open up to you and explain what is going on. How do you get them now to move from the negative thoughts to being in the now and being more positive? That is looking at taking a step back and looking at the broader picture, looking at the wider picture. The first thing to help them to realize is that not all thoughts are true. There are some thoughts that there's absolutely no proof of it. And then the next thing we have to do is look at their emotions. Let them notice their emotions. How does it feel physically when they're having this negative thought?
Mhm.
Then we have to go about challenging this thought. How do we challenge the thought? Parents, not through lecturing our children. We can help them to challenge the thoughts by going through curious questions. So, for example, the whole mind reading thing. I think Susie doesn't like me. Why do you think Susie doesn't like you? What evidence do you have about Susie doesn't like you? How can you verify that Susie doesn't like you? Or what plans do you need to put in place to have a conversation with Susie to show that she does, to prove that she doesn't like you. When you take this solution-oriented approach, it helps the mind to move from the negative to start thinking about the positive thing. So what you're doing is taking an action-based approach to helping them to have more realistic thinking process. Because sometimes once you start going through those curious questions, they will start thinking that they really do not have any evidence that, for example, a particular friend does not like them, or a friend at school doesn't like them at all. So for example, I'll give another example. If they are always sitting at school alone, they might think, focusing on the negative, nobody likes me. What can you do to help them? Okay, you can have solutions such as having an action plan. Maybe they're going to talk to one friend in class today, and once they talk to that friend, ask, can I sit with you during lunch? They will realize by taking that action oriented approach that maybe there are other people who would like to join in and have lunch with them, but they are also going through the challenges of being afraid to ask other people. So the important thing is to have your children focus on solutions. Ask them, why do you think this way? What do you think could be different? So if they're thinking that they're not capable about particular things and they're stuck on constantly failing, ask them, what could you do differently? How could you plan differently? Do you need to study more? Do you need to practice more? What kind of steps do you need to take so you get a different outcome? Because by focusing on the negative, you're only focusing on what goes wrong. But once you start focusing on solutions, you're looking at alternatives and seeing what you can do. The next thing I would recommend is you can have your children have a gratitude journal. Because again, if we neglect what's going on in our lives that's really positive, that really works for us, we tend to focus more on what is going bad. So we make a shift and thinking, ask your children to have a gratitude journal, and they can bring it up in the family meeting, for example, to share what were they grateful for every day of this week. When you change your mindset and thinking of what do I have that I appreciate and I'm grateful for, you're more likely to stay in the positive mind of thinking. So parents, yes, it can be difficult to have your children constantly thinking back on what could go wrong or what have gone wrong. But first of all, build the relationship. It's extremely critical to build a relationship with them so they can open up to you. Be more of a coach and ask curious questions that would get them to challenge the thoughts. It's really important that you help them to challenge the thoughts so that they can realize that what they were actually thinking was not realistic. And in challenging that thought, to have them do action plan. What can they do differently to invite more people to be their friends, to ensure that they do not fail at a particular goal anymore, and so on. So that is my tips on what you can do to help your children to shift from being stuck in the negative to being more on the positive.
That's great. I think that every parent needs to do that for themselves also.
Yes.
This is a wonderful thing to start. I wish I had learned this around 10 years old, 10, 11. What a great thing that would have. I just think it's a wonderful thing to teach children. And,
yes.
and as a counselor myself, I mean, that's very much cognitive behavioral therapy and the whole philosophy behind every thought is creating your future. And for the most part, maybe not every thought, but thoughts create your actions, and that's what you do every day. And what you do every day is who you become. So be very careful of that. And I love the mindfulness as far as gratitude, especially for young people.
Right.
Great idea. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. And also to remember that not all your thoughts are true.
Yeah,
I think especially teenagers get trapped into thinking that everything they think is true without any form of evidence. That's why it's extremely important that we help them to challenge the thought, but not through lecturing.
Challenge the thought.
Yes, challenge the thought and help them with leading questions to find solutions and to help them to see a different perspective. That's a very powerful way of getting them to switch into thinking that, because, for example, you might have that they might be looking at a kid in a moment and the kid might frown and they think, oh my God, that kid doesn't like me. What evidence do you have? They immediately jump to the worst conclusion. What evidence do you have that the kid doesn't like you? They might say, but the way the kid looked at me. But then you said, are you sure? Do you want to have a conversation with this kid? Do you want to maybe invite this kid for lunch one day to just sit and have lunch with you? In communicating with the kid might have said, I was just having a
A bad
thought about
day.
how,
Yeah.
yes, a bad day, something happened to my sibling or my parents, and I was worried, and that's why I was frowning. And then they realize, yes, you cannot read people's mind. You don't know what is in the moment. So if you can get them to start thinking like that, then they're better able to make a switch and to
Yeah.
also have more solutions.
I love that. Just that, what is the truth? And then just stop the storytelling. You know,
Yes.
if you're not really, you know, what is the truth? If you don't really know the truth, then let's stop the storytelling and have a conversation with the person. I love that. And adults, that's actually great advice for you too.
Yes.
Because women do
What
that a lot.
evidence do you have? Your mind reading. You don't know
Yes.
what's in somebody's mind. They could really be thinking something completely different that has nothing to do with you at all.
I have
But if
had
you
that
don't take the
situation where,
action, yeah.
yeah, where someone said, well, I was at a stop sign, I guess, with 3 kids in the back, and I had made a turn, and it was my brother-in-law, and he said, you looked right at me, you didn't even say hi, and I honestly did not even see him. And I love this man. I would never ignore him if I saw him. And it
Hmm.
was forever to explain to him. I wouldn't do that. But he had storytelling going on that I like deliberately ignored him, which I am not that kind of person. And
Right.
it was so interesting. It was really, and that was way long time ago, 30 something years ago, when I realized, well, just the truth, our truth, that's just the port, you know, our truth isn't necessarily the truth. His truth was certainly not
Yeah,
what I was
exactly.
trying to convey. And all we needed to do was have a conversation. And I even apologized. And I don't even recall that situation. But, and then it was diffused completely. But if he never even talked to me about it, he may have held that grudge for years.
Yes, that's why it's important to teach our children, okay, you're having this negative thought. What action can we take to prove that this thing is actually what you think it is? So you might, in a similar situation, you might say to your children, why don't you invite your friend over to sit with you and have a conversation with her or him and say, hey, this is what I thought with the way you reacted to me. And they might say, but that was not in my intention and I'm sorry. So again, you help to diffuse the negative thoughts by having your children to be more solution oriented. Instead of dwelling on what has gone wrong, on what could possibly go wrong, help them to develop solutions and actions that they can put in place to make sure they can resolve the issue. So it's really important. Focus on the solutions and also have gratitude for what you already have.
Yeah, it's really great advice, and thank you so much. This is fabulous. We'll come back to Parenting the Fascinating Way next week with answering more questions, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
answer more questions.
Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.